An abusive cop breaks a 9-year-old girl's arm, sneering as she cries. He doesn't know her emergency call isn't to 911, it's a live line to her father, Steven Seagal, who is hearing every second. The afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across the quiet suburban streets of Laurel Valley. 9-year-old Isla Seagal, her sketchbook tucked under one arm and a half-eaten apple in her hand, walked with the easy, unbothered rhythm of a child making her way home from art class. She was 2 blocks from her house when a black and white police cruiser slid to the curb beside her, its movement needlessly aggressive. The driver, Officer Kyle Harding, leaned out. He was a man whose uniform seemed to contain a simmering, volatile pressure. "You lost, sweetheart?" he asked, his tone a cold, condescending drawl. Isla, her father's daughter in her polite composure, stopped. "No, sir. I live right there," she said, pointing down the street. "Where are your parents? You got ID?" Harding demanded, stepping out of the car, his boots hitting the pavement with a thud. "I'm 9, she replied, a hint of confusion in her dark, intelligent eyes. "I don't have an ID." "Don't get smart with me," he snapped, his temper flaring instantly at what he perceived as defiance. He lunged forward and grabbed her small wrist. Isla froze, a gasp of fear escaping her. "Please, let go." "I didn't do anything," she whispered, trying to pull away. Her sketchbook clattered to the ground. The apple rolled into the gutter. Harding twisted her arm behind her back with brutal force. "Got a smart mouth for a little brat," he muttered. And then came the sound, a sickening, sharp crack that echoed in the quiet air. Isla screamed, a pure, piercing sound of agony as she collapsed to the ground, her arm bent at an unnaturally sharp angle. But in that blinding moment of terror, her free thumb found and held the emergency speed dial key on her phone, a shortcut her father had drilled into her for years. The call connected instantly. Miles away, Steven Seagal answered, and his world was shattered by the live sound of his daughter's scream. For Steven Seagal, time stopped. He stood in his quiet, sunlit dojo, the phone pressed to his ear, a direct conduit to his daughter's horror. He heard her ragged sobs, the officer's callous grumbling, and then the sound of a car door slamming and tires squealing away. The line went silent, but the echo of his daughter's pain remained, a ghost in the machine. The rage that rose in him was not hot and explosive. It was a cold, deep, seismic shift in his soul. It was the ancient, protective fury of a father whose only child had been savaged by a predator hiding behind a badge. He didn't shout. He didn't break anything. He simply stood, a monolith of controlled devastation, his eyes closing for one long, terrifying second. When they opened, they were different, no longer the eyes of a master in meditation, but of a hunter. He was already moving, his actions fluid, precise, and lethally purposed. He made 2 calls. The first was to his head of security, a former Mossad agent. Isla's phone. Track its current location. Now. The second call was to a discreet, high-powered attorney he kept on retainer for situations exactly like this, situations where the system itself was the enemy. "We have a situation in Laurel Valley," he said, his voice a low, flat rumble. "A police officer, unknown name, just assaulted my daughter. I want everything you have on the Laurel Valley PD's misconduct complaints for the last 5 years. I want it by the time I get to the hospital." He was in his car in under a minute, the engine roaring to life. As he tore through the streets, he wasn't just a father racing to his child's side. He was an instrument of vengeance, a force of nature that would not rest until he had uprooted the entire rotten tree from which this poison fruit had fallen. At his daughter's bedside in the sterile, chaotic emergency room, seeing her small, broken form, he made a silent vow. This wouldn't end with one officer. It would end with the system that created him. Information, for a man with Seagal's resources, was a weapon. Within an hour of Isla being admitted to the hospital, he had a name, Officer Kyle Harding, and a routine. Harding, after abandoning a 9-year-old girl with a broken arm on a sidewalk, was a creature of habit. Every Sunday, he ate at the corner diner, a greasy spoon on the edge of town favored by local cops. Seagal walked into the diner like a wraith. The air was thick with the smell of fried onions and stale coffee. He spotted Harding immediately, hunched over a plate of steak and eggs in a corner booth, laughing at something on his phone. The sight of the man's casual, unbothered demeanor sent a wave of ice through Seagal's veins. Seagal approached the table, his large frame casting a long shadow. Harding looked up, his mouth full, his expression one of pure annoyance. "Yeah. What do you want?" Seagal said nothing. He simply placed his phone on the table and tapped the screen. The diner fell silent as the audio from Isla's emergency call filled the air. It was raw, unfiltered, and horrifying. First, Harding's own aggressive voice, "You got ID?" Then Isla's small, polite reply. The escalation. The fear in her voice. "Please let go." And then, the sound that made a waitress drop a glass, the sharp, sickening crack of bone breaking, followed by Isla's raw scream of agony. Every patron in the diner was frozen, staring. Harding's fork clattered onto his plate. The color drained from his face, replaced by a pasty, sweat-sheened panic. Where did you get that?" he stammered. "You ask a 9-year-old for ID, Seagal stated, his voice a low, menacing whisper that was somehow louder than the scream had been. "You break her arm. And then you leave her crying on the pavement." He leaned in, his dark, bearded face a mask of cold fury. "And you come here for a steak." Harding tried to bluster, to regain control. She was resisting. "It was an accident." "You can't prove." "I don't have to prove anything," Seagal interrupted, his voice cutting like a razor. He slid a napkin across the table. On it was written, "Laurel Valley General. Room 302. Isla Seagal. 9 years old. Broken humerus. The recording proves it. The doctors will prove it. And I," he paused, his eyes locking onto Harding's, "will prove to you what happens when you lay a hand on my daughter." The video from the diner, filmed by a cook on his phone through the kitchen pass-through, was the spark that lit the fuse. Combined with an anonymous leak of the original emergency call audio, it created a viral firestorm. The story was irresistible, a brutal cop, a defenseless child, and the quiet, terrifying confrontation with a legendary action hero. #JusticeForIsla exploded across social media. By the next morning, the Laurel Valley Police Department was under siege. News vans lined the street. A small but vocal group of protesters had gathered on the steps, their numbers growing by the hour. Their signs were simple and direct: "A badge isn't a shield, protect kids, not bad cops." Inside, Chief Evans, a man more concerned with political optics than policing, was in full damage control mode. His first move was predictable and weak: Officer Harding was placed on paid administrative leave, pending a full investigation. The statement was met with a fresh wave of public derision. Seagal, however, was not waiting for an internal investigation that he knew would be a whitewash. He made his next move. He didn't go to the press. He went straight to the system's heart. He walked into the police department, flanked by his legal team, and demanded a meeting with Chief Evans. He didn't come with just the recording of his daughter's assault. He came with a meticulously compiled dossier, the result of his team's overnight investigation. It contained sworn affidavits from 3 other families in Laurel Valley whose children had been harassed or roughed up by Officer Harding in the past. All of their complaints had been dismissed. Seagal laid the file on the chief's desk. "This isn't about one bad cop, Chief," Seagal said, his voice cold. "This is about a pattern you've allowed to fester. Your investigation is over. Mine has just begun." Chief Evans, faced with the dossier, the viral videos, and the growing crowd outside, offered platitudes. "We take these allegations very seriously, Mr. Seagal. We will conduct a thorough Seagal cut him off. "No. You will announce Officer Harding's termination for cause and recommend his immediate prosecution to the district attorney. You will do it publicly, by the end of the day. Or this dossier, along with a great deal more, will be delivered to the Department of Justice by morning." The chief balked, sputtering about union rules and due process. Seagal saw it for what it was, a system designed to protect itself above all else. He knew then that taking down one cop, even one police chief, wouldn't be enough. He had to attack the entire corrupt structure. That evening, he held a press conference. It wasn't with a major network, it was a live stream from a laptop in his hotel room, raw and unfiltered. "Yesterday, my daughter was hurt," he began. "Today, I learned she was not the first. The system that is supposed to protect our children is protecting the men who hurt them." He then announced the formation of a new, privately funded national organization, Fighters for Institutional Safety and Truth. FIST. FIST will be a weapon for the powerless, he declared. A team of lawyers, investigators, and advocates who will go into towns like Laurel Valley and shine a light on the darkness. We will provide legal counsel to victims, we will investigate patterns of abuse, and we will hold corrupt departments accountable, in the courtroom and in the court of public opinion. This is no longer just a father's fight. This is everyone's fight. The live stream shattered viewership records. The battle had officially escalated. The creation of FIST was a declaration of war, and the system responded in kind. The first volley was a coordinated smear campaign. Anonymous sources within law enforcement unions began leaking carefully crafted narratives to sympathetic journalists. Seagal was painted as a volatile, ego-driven vigilante, using his daughter's unfortunate accident to launch a dangerous anti-police crusade. The diner confrontation was reframed, "Unstable actor assaults decorated officer," screamed one headline. The second volley was legal harassment. As Seagal was leaving a FIST strategy meeting in a downtown office building, two plainclothes detectives intercepted him in the lobby. "Mr. Seagal," one said, flashing a badge. "You're under arrest." The charge was absurd, aggravated assault and intimidation, stemming from the diner incident. It was a transparent, retaliatory move designed to bog him down in legal proceedings and discredit him publicly. As they cuffed him, a pre-tipped news crew happened to be there, their cameras flashing, capturing the image of the legendary hero being led away in handcuffs. The footage was on every news channel within the hour. For a moment, it seemed like the system's strategy was working. But they had made a critical miscalculation. They thought arresting Steven Seagal would make him look like a criminal. Instead, it made him look like a martyr. His lawyers had him released in under 3 hours, the charges so baseless they were almost laughed out of the pre-arraignment hearing. But the image of his arrest backfired spectacularly on the department. Public support for FIST surged. Donations poured in. More importantly, the blatant act of retaliation convinced hundreds of other victims across the country that the system was as corrupt as Seagal claimed. They began uploading their own stories, their own evidence, to the FIST database. The system, in trying to silence one man, had inadvertently created an army. With his arrest having failed to intimidate him and only strengthening public support for FIST, Seagal's hidden adversaries grew desperate. The data FIST was compiling, tens of thousands of verified testimonies, leaked internal files, bodycam footage, was becoming a threat not just to one department, but to corrupt networks across multiple states. The fight was no longer about a single bully cop, it was about exposing a nationwide rot. And so, the enemy crossed the one line that Seagal, even in his coldest calculations, had not fully anticipated. The threat came via a silent, encrypted video file sent to his personal email. It was drone footage, high resolution and chillingly stable, taken from above Isla's elementary school. The camera zoomed in on the playground during recess. It followed Isla, her arm in a colorful cast, as she sat on a bench, drawing in her sketchbook. The camera then panned to a man standing near the school fence, his face intentionally blurred, his hands in his pockets. He was just watching her. The clip held on his unmoving form for 10 seconds, then cut to black. There was no explicit threat, no note, no demand. None was needed. The message was clear, unambiguous, and absolute: we can get to her. Stop, or she is next. The cold fury Seagal had felt when he heard Isla's arm break was nothing compared to the glacial, absolute rage that now settled over him. This was no longer about justice or systemic change. They had made it personal in the most unforgivable way imaginable. They had targeted his child. The warrior who had, until now, operated with strategic restraint was gone. In his place was simply a father. And he was about to bring their entire corrupt world crashing down upon their heads. The drone footage was a declaration of total war. Seagal's response was equally total. He called an emergency press conference on the steps of the federal courthouse in Los Angeles, a location chosen for its symbolic power. Every major news outlet scrambled to attend, sensing this was the story's explosive climax. Seagal stepped to the podium, flanked by his lead attorney and a team of data analysts from FIST. He looked directly into the sea of cameras, his bearded face like carved granite. For weeks, we have been told that the problem of police misconduct is one of a few bad apples, he began, his voice a low, commanding rumble. We have been met with denials, delays, and intimidation. Yesterday, the forces we are fighting made their final mistake. They threatened my 9-year-old daughter. A collective gasp went through the crowd. He didn't wait for it to subside. They did this to silence me. Instead, they have ensured that the entire world will now hear the truth. He nodded to his team. A massive LED screen behind him flickered to life. First, it played the drone footage of the man watching Isla's school. The image froze, then an AI enhancement program sharpened the blurred face, revealing a disgraced ex-sergeant known for intimidation tactics. The crowd erupted. But that was just the appetizer. My opponents believe they can hide in the shadows, Seagal continued. Today, we turn on every light. What followed was the data dump. The screen began displaying a torrent of information from the FIST database. Leaked internal affairs memos from Laurel Valley proving the cover-up of Harding's past crimes. Body cam footage from a dozen other inconclusive cases. And then, maps of the United States lit up, showing statistical hotspots of excessive force complaints, connecting precincts and officers across 3 states in a clear network of misconduct and cover-ups. Names, badge numbers, and sealed case files flashed across the screen. It was an overwhelming, irrefutable avalanche of evidence. It was checkmate. He hadn't just exposed one corrupt cop, he had exposed the entire corrupt ecosystem that protected him. As the data continued to flow, he concluded, we are no longer asking for accountability. We are providing it. All of this, every file, has just been delivered to the Department of Justice and every major news outlet in the world. The secrets are over. The real work begins now. The data dump was a political and legal earthquake. Within 24 hours, the U.S. Department of Justice announced a massive, multi-state federal investigation into systemic corruption, citing the FIST database as its primary catalyst. In Laurel Valley, the fallout was immediate. Chief Evans resigned. The DA, facing federal oversight, fast-tracked the criminal case against Kyle Harding. His trial was a formality, presented with Seagal's recording, bystander videos, and a mountain of past complaints. A jury found him guilty in a matter of hours. He was sentenced to the maximum term for felony assault and abuse of authority. But the story no longer ended with Harding. Seagal's FIST initiative, now armed with undeniable public credibility and a flood of new whistleblowers, became a permanent, powerful force in the fight for police reform. They worked with lawmakers to draft Isla's Law, a piece of legislation aimed at increasing transparency in police disciplinary records. Months later, Isla's arm healed, leaving only a thin scar. She stood in a newly opened art therapy center for young victims of violence, the first project funded by FIST. The walls were covered with paintings and drawings, testaments to survival. Isla, Her sketchbook in hand, was no longer just a participant, she was a junior counselor, helping a younger child mix colors. She was using her own quiet strength to help others find theirs. One afternoon, Seagal visited the center. He didn't announce his arrival. He just stood in the doorway and watched his daughter. He saw her lean over and whisper something to the child, who then smiled and added a bright yellow sun to their drawing. In that small, quiet moment, Seagal saw the true victory. It wasn't in a courtroom verdict or a disgraced cop's conviction. It was here, in the gentle act of creation, in the healing of a wound, in the quiet determination of a child who had faced the darkness and chosen to paint the light. He had stepped in to protect his daughter, and in doing so, had empowered her to become a protector herself. The legacy wasn't about the fight, it was about the peace that followed. This story is a powerful reminder that while one man's rage can cause a wound, a father's love, channeled into a fight for justice, can start a revolution. Steven Seagal didn't just bring down a corrupt cop, he empowered his daughter and countless others to find their own voices. What does it mean to you to fight for something bigger than yourself? Share your thoughts on what true justice looks like in the comments below. Show your respect for the protectors and the healers in our communities. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful narratives of courage and change.